Encounter in Osaka. This happened about 6 years ago. I was studying abroad in southern Japan, Shiga Prefecture to be exact. It was a 3-month-long program, and in that time all I did was study and take a lot of trips around that area of the country. I had friends I would travel with at times, but more often than not, I like to take trips to different cities and explore a lot on my own. My reasoning being that, oh, Japan is a pretty safe country, right? Well, it is. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have its share of creepers. I was still in clueless foreigner mode at the time though, so this didn't cross my mind at all. Anyways, one afternoon, I decided to take the train down to Osaka, because it is one of my favorite cities in the world. I've been there a few times before, all of them with other people, so this time, I went on my own, just to walk around and see what I could find. I love wandering big cities, so I planned to make a whole day of it. Everything was going fine, until I suddenly ended up lost. Normally, I'm not the type of person to get lost, as I make mental notes and make sure to keep an eye out for landmarks along the way. But I was just so busy gawking at everything, I didn't do a very good job of keeping up with where I was going. I ended up walking down this darkened street. It was the middle of the day, so there were still plenty of people about, but this particular little street was sort of cut off, and I saw signs for different hotels and the like leading down the way. I stopped to take a breather, trying to decide if I should retrace my steps or ask someone. The latter seemed more efficient, and I finally noticed a little old man walking a little ways down the street with his arms behind his back. Oh, I'm in luck, I thought, since after all, what could be less dangerous than a little old Japanese man, right? I scampered over to him, already preparing my terrible Japanese at the time to ask him for directions to the train station. He seemed very nice at first, and said he would be glad to show me, if I would just follow him. Still not thinking much of it, since it's not at all unusual for people in this country to show you where you need to go, instead of trying to explain it to the clueless-looking foreigner. I smiled and shook my head and just asked if he could tell me, because I didn't want to trouble him. He looked at me, almost annoyed, and just said, "Come, come," rather insistently. This bothered me slightly, but not in an alarming way, just a bit puzzled. So I finally nodded and started to follow. We weren't walking very long when he led me right to the door of a skeezy-looking hotel, all in the same streets. I took a few steps back away from him and said I asked for directions to the train station. I was pretty sure I hadn't said anything incorrectly, and I'd been perfectly clear. He turned around to face me, gestured suggestively with his gnarled hands, and said, "Sex, this way, come." I was somewhat dumbstruck by this until he reached out to grab my arm, and that's when I promptly bowed with a hasty thank you before turning and running back the way I came, which in hindsight is what I should have done in the first place. Definitely not as terrifying as half the stories on here, but left me rattled for the remainder of that day, and I no longer trust little old men to give me directions. Thrilling walk in the park. I moved to Japan for my husband, as he studied Japanese in university, and as we were both students who worked while in school. Neither of us had the opportunity to study abroad, so my husband got a job teaching English, and off we went. Additionally, I never even left the US before, so I thought, time to mix it up. As a mean to make extra money while I look for a full-time job, I decided to do some private lessons through various websites that host such things. It is also a great way to meet Japanese people. One thing about Japan is that everyone here is Japanese. I know that is so friggin' obvious, but it is actually quite surprising when you're part of the US, or any part of the world for that matter, that hosts people from all over the world. And Being foreign, you are constantly stared at. And there are of course people who purposefully seek you out because you are foreign. When I first met this guy, he seemed harmless enough, although he kept spitting and drooling on the table, which sounds creepy and gross, but I chalked it up to him being nervous. Speaking another language is scary. At first, we met once a week for an hour. Usually we would walk around the very crowded park. Eventually, we started traveling to further spots and walking around different popular spots. I was apprehensive at first, but he was very respectful and didn't ask me any weird questions. So I started feeling like he truly just wanted to practice his English. Well, of course, little things started happening. So minuscule. Alarm bells ding very quietly in the back of my head, but I thought it was nothing. For example, he would touch my arm to guide me somewhere, which really isn't a big deal at all. Except according to other Japanese people, Japanese men just don't do that. He also once grabbed my arm and said, "You're so cute." So I do things like bring up my husband a lot and ask him about his wife. For some reason, I think that will send a hint. So, I am quite naive and just chalk it up to being friendly. Maybe he is a little different than other Japanese men. He did live in various places abroad. We started traveling to places like the zoo, aquariums, which I now think were probably dates. He would always ask if I was hungry and try to persuade me to get lunch. I always declined because for some reason, it made me really uncomfortable. There were a lot of little things along the way that set off alarm bells. For example, he sent me an article talking about sex education in the US, and we talked about it. He asked, "They teach you to make sex?" Once we were at a popular tourist area in Tokyo, and he showed me a theater that used to have shows with naked girls. He also inquired if I'd ever been to the red light district in Tokyo, of which I thought he was saying kabuki show, which is something completely different, and said, "No, but I really want to." Those are very two different things, but I mixed it up. Not to mention the numerous times out of nowhere where he would say, "If I say something weird, it's because my English is bad." So, around 2 weeks ago, we go to a park that happens to be very large, and no one else is there. I honestly thought nothing of it. People think Japan is all naturey and beautiful, at least I did, but the Kanto region is pretty much houses upon houses, with the exception of random parks that are quite beautiful. So, I'm just immensely enjoying the nature as we walk around and talk, and he suddenly points out that no one else is in this massive park. He asks, "Are you scared?" Me being naive, I thought maybe he was just concerned about wildlife. Why? Are there animals here? Something that might hurt us? No. Okay. Now, alarm bells are going off in my head, but as Japan feels very safe, I don't really pay attention to them. Also, despite the fact that I am a very petite person, Japanese men are tiny, and I am stupidly not afraid of them. His comment kinds of sits with me, but I'm more annoyed by it than anything else. Why should I be scared? You think this is your chance to do something to me? But I brush it off, and we see more people in the park. Well, we leave the park unscathed, but as we walk back to the station, he keeps bringing up the fact that we were all alone in the park. He asked me once again if I was scared, so I said no. Why? Were you scared? It was thrilling. At this point, I would like to point out that much of the porn I've seen in Japan, as it is right there in your face in the 7-Eleven, is girls who basically look like they're not willing participants. The front cover of a magazine in the 7-Eleven by my house is a blonde foreign woman bawling her eyes out with a collar around her neck. So, I just keep thinking in my head, why he would keep asking if I was scared? Why did he keep bringing up that we were alone? Why did he describe it as thrilling? I just honestly can't think of any other reason other than that he, A, was thinking about his opportunity to attack me, or B, he thought this was her chance to start an affair, or C, his English is really bad, and didn't understand what he was saying, but I've had enough conversations with him to know that is unlikely. Stalker with a little girl voice modulator. So, I don't really like telling this story, but it just seems so unreal to me that it even happened. I moved to Japan a few years ago for school, and I was getting along fine. Got a cheap cell phone and a tiny apartment in a secluded part of Tokyo. I didn't really have any close friends, so I spent a lot of time alone, which I liked very much. So, one day, I noticed that I had missed 7 calls. Did I mention that I'd just gone there and had no friends? I tried calling the number back, and the person picked up, then hung up right away. So I tried to ignore it, and bam! Rings again. I pick up, and it's a little girl on the phone. Or at least, it sounds like one. So at first I thought she had dialed wrong, and was trying to get her grandfather or something like that, and was sort of friendly until she said my name and my country of origin. And I was so green that I just kept asking her who she was and why she was calling instead of just hanging up. I never corroborated anything she said because I thought she was legit, like someone from the school. I was stupid. But I've been teaching little kids, and there was something weird about the way she talked. I know it sounds weird, but she talked like a man. I can't explain it, but she talked like a man. Her cadence and the choice of words wasn't like a kid at all. She said she was friends with Sally. Who's Sally, I thought. She asked me where I lived, in the neighborhood I live in, if I was married, what time I go home every night. Keep in mind that this was all in Japanese, and at the time, I could not speak well, and could barely understand, let alone be clever enough to trick them into giving something away. I hung up. They called back. They would call me 15 to 20 plus times a day. I dreaded looking at my phone. Sometimes it was the little girl, and sometimes just breathing. I didn't have curtains on my windows. I lived on the first floor in a tiny shoebox apartment. I didn't have anyone to call to say, hey, can you come over? I may have been followed home and I don't feel safe. It really sucked. On my way home every day, I would duck into shops, take different routes home, turn corners really fast, and look to make sure no one was following. I trusted no one, cut eye for all, what are you looking at kind of thing. And still, the phone would ring and ring. They were calling from 2 phone numbers. So, I went to the police, and they told me that they couldn't do anything like call him because if he was to murder me, then the police would be to blame. Yay, thanks. They just took me to the cell phone shop and showed me how to record conversations and how to block the numbers. I blocked them and the call stopped. But I still didn't feel safe. I was still scared every single day. And the fear turned to rage. So one day, while washing cabbages in my kitchen, I was looking out the window, wondering if someone was looking in, and I snapped. I called one of the numbers and an Indian man picked up. Why have you been calling me? I haven't been calling you. Did you give my number to somebody? No, of course not. Then you have been calling me. No, I swear. I'm not stupid. I know it was you. Shut up and listen. I'm gonna say this once. You will never even think of me again, or I'll cut off your dick. Do you understand? But come to me, then I'll fucking dare you to try to come at me, okay? I'll be waiting for you and show you mess with the wrong chick. I dare you. Just fucking try it. Are you listening? Do you understand? Do you understand? Okay. Click. And I had adrenaline-flavored cabbage soup. And that was the end of it. Creeper in Japan. I'll start off by saying this is my first post on Reddit, and I'm typing this on my mobile, so excuse any errors. Reading this subreddit really resonated with an experience I had. Right. So this happened in Japan. I was with my sister at the time. We're both 20-something-year-olds, and we were out at around 11 p.m. Not dangerous at all because 1, this is Japan, and 2, we were on a busy, well-lit street. So, we had just exited an arcade, and my sister wanted to go to a pharmacy a few shops down, but we forget if it was to the left or right, so we stood outside looking lost for a second. A moment later, this guy, Japanese, wearing a blue denim button-down shirt, comes up to us, asking if we're lost. My sister, being the more paranoid one, ignores him while I smile and say we're fine. Not really strange, since he heard us speaking English, and some Japanese people are really friendly to foreigners. We recall where the pharmacy was, so we head there, and blue denim is behind us. Okay, so maybe he's just coincidentally going in the same direction. We head in and start to browse, and just when I'm at the makeup aisle, my sister comes up and tells me to look at the entrance. And it's blue denim guy. I don't know what the heck he was doing. He's just standing outside, not even pretending to browse at the displays. Now, we're slightly creeped out by now, and the other entrance is so close. If we wanted to leave, we had to go past them somehow. So, blue denim guy, on the other hand, alternates between standing at the entranceway and walking into the store near the aisles we were at. It's a really small store, so he would just have to walk a few steps. Quite obviously, checking if we were still there. Anyways, at this point, it had been maybe 5 minutes, and he had obviously shot straight past helpful into the creeper zone. So I ring my boyfriend and tell him to cycle here, about a 7-minute ride from home. Up until he got to us, we had still been seeing blue denim, but when my boyfriend walked into the store and I went to point out blue denim, I realized he was gone. Didn't see him outside either, so even now, I'm so weirded out by the experience because why was he standing around for over 50 minutes, and how the hell did he disappear so fast? Sex? This is my first post ever to Reddit, so I'm still figuring out how to use the site. Thanks in advance for bearing with me as I puzzle out formatting and stuff, especially because I am posting from mobile. So this encounter occurred in August of 2009 while I was on a student exchange to Japan. At the time, I was 14 years old. I had only been in Japan for less than a month or maybe 3 weeks or so, and therefore my Japanese was not good, as in, I could say next to nothing except my name, age, etc. So, it was probably about 9 in the morning, and I was on my way to the Student Exchange Association's headquarters for some reason or another, since both my homestay parents were at work already by this time, and I was just going to bike to the place because it was probably only about a 20-minute ride. Now, for the story to make sense, keep in mind that, in Japan, they drive on the left side of the road, instead of the right. So, I was biking on the right side of a not-so-busy road, when an oncoming white car began to slow down and pull over near me. I remember kind of glancing over into the car, and noticing this guy just gawking at me. Like jaw to the floor, slow drive-by type of deal. Now, me being an extremely pale, very ash blonde girl, I had been getting tons of attention about my appearance in my short time in Japan though, so I thought nothing of it, really. Until this guy did a tire-screeching U-turn behind me and pulled up to an intersection where I was waiting to cross the road, now right in front of him. I uneasily tried to avoid eye contact with him as I crossed because I could feel him staring hard at me the whole time. However, now I was on a big busy stretch of road that is pretty long, and my destination was at the end on the left. So this time, I was biking on the left side of the road, traveling with cars going the same way. I figured I'd be fine on the main drag of town, but when the white car started to slowly drive along level with me, I remember starting to feel pretty uneasy. The man in the car starts calling out to me while still driving alongside me, and finally, I look over at him and pull over, being the idiot child that I was. In the car was a relatively good-looking young man in a suit, and I was taken aback by the fact that it was not a creepy old man following me. Stupidly, I felt more relaxed. He tried to ask me some questions in Japanese at first, but I just shook my head. So then he tried broken English. He asked me where I was going, and again, stupidly, I just gestured ahead. He made some more comments I couldn't really understand about my hair and stuff like that, gesturing for me to come closer, and not really understanding and trying to be polite. I got closer. Finally, when I was about 3 feet away from him, he asked me a muffled question, which I can't really hear, so I get a bit closer again to hear him, and I realize he's simply asking, "Sex?" I am immediately taken aback and shrink away from him, and my child face of horror and shock, accompanied by my loud, adamant exclamation of "no," must have caused him to bugger off, because he peeled right on out of there. Mind you, the whole time during this awkward face-to-face conversation, we had been on a very busy road, so I don't think what he was thinking was going to happen. That I was just gonna leave my bike there on the road and get in his car with my Door Explorer backpack. I have so many other creepy experiences like this one from my trip, mostly with men asking me to get in their cars and stuff like that. But this experience was the worst because I had only been there for maybe 3 weeks and was really shaken up. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but it really wasn't, because a similar man in a similar car approached the other exchange student girl in my program months later, also asking her creepy questions and trying to get her in his car. So, creepy fucking young man who tried to pick up a 14-year-old girl for sex at 9 a.m. on a busy road. Let's not meet again.